The really big theme in this book that I kind of picked up on was the overarching question of like, can one man alter the course of a species? So that's the overall question, and that underpins like the narrative. It doesn't necessarily drive it, and that's not what the characters necessarily bring up. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but it is just kind of like the theme of the novel. So it's a question that I think is extremely pertinent. But yeah, so with the return of the Primarch, one of the Emperor's lost sons, thought dead these last 10,000 years, the ancient and deteriorating future humanity must contend with one of the most powerful beings ever created by their faiths, God, coming back and imposing beliefs that are seen as welcome to some, but to most are seen as blinkered and naive. This reflects another major theme in the book, which is time. There are many scenes sprinkled throughout that really make the reader understand just how old the Imperium is and how much those that live in the setting at present misunderstand or have mythologized about their past in all aspects. With newer technology or architecture being less potent or not as grand and haphazardly mixed with the old just to get things to function half as well, at best, and at worst, it just straight up doesn't work. But it is a kind of set dressing that highlights Chris Straight's attention to detail, that the setting is just as well thought out and written as in most of his work. So if that's in any way interesting you so far, then that's as close as I'm ever going to get to like actually recommending a book for others to read. So you'll never actually get an arbitrary like out of 10 from me. Like maybe I'll jokingly be like an between like Erebus and Loken out of, like an out of, if 1 is Erebus and 10 is Loken, you'll get a like a different. I'll joke around by doing something like that, but I'll never do like this is a 7. Like everyone's taste is different, and my taste isn't your taste, and like that's obvious to say, but to be clear, like even my taste like 2 years ago isn't the taste that I have now. So like it would almost be like not even authentic for me to give like an out of 10, even if I was rating it for myself, because like I change, we all change. So yeah, I will give you the best you'll get out of me usually is like a should you read it or not in the review segment, and I'll just say yes or no. But so far, yes, I enjoyed it. I think it's worth the read. But we continue to the character analysis. So this book is like the sequel to The Emperor's Legion. It's the Guardians of the Throne series, but that's kind of misleading because there's only 2 books right now. Maybe there might be another one. There's always surprise, but this was, I think, like 2017 or 2018 I got published, so I feel like if there was going to be another book, there would have been, and if there is going to be another book, it's going to be about Valerian, just because of how this series ended. But anyways, so many of the same faces in this book fill out the spread of characters that are seen throughout. And one new change in the characters is Jack. So Tyrion stepped down as Consularius, and this is like legit in the first chapter, so I'm just kind of setting the scene. So he steps down as Consularius, and the person that takes his place is his second, Jack, which is a familiar face and name, because she was his. You could see her, like, she showed herself many times in the first book. So and in many ways, now that she's assumed office and given kind of like real power, she is Tyrion's like complete opposite. So she doesn't stay impartial on most matters, and she uses every power bestowed upon the office that she now holds to pursue what she sees as the correct course of action. So you see a very active Consularius instead of the very passive functionary that was Tyrion. So it's such an unusual departure from the role that previous chancellors have, that it's seen as almost like an overreach. Like, she has all these powers. They were bestowed upon, the chancellor's office, but Tyrion treated it, he was way more of a discretionary person who kept a lot of his, like, if he did have any kind of feelings on the subject, he kept it out of it because he just played the game. And it wasn't basically until the events of the first book when he was trying to get that bill passed that he really started interfering or letting his opinions and views known. So he held that office for like 90 something years, and now we have Jack, who's like brand new to the office, basically using every lever that she's been given and just cranking it, because she knows what needs to happen. It's time. It's especially right now. There's just a time of great reform. So this is a dynamic that is actually really fun to see, because you get to see what's essentially a facilitator or a functionary butting heads with high lords that have been kind of sitting atop the imperial hierarchy for thousands of years, and it's just interesting. And the interactions and the dialogue that come out of it are irregular, but they're welcome. The second person is obviously Valerian, so he's back again with his arc progressing further down, basically into seeing him become more human, which is a personality quirk that you don't really see in Custodes very often, just because of their lifestyle and what they're about and what they're made for. They don't really have the room for it. So it's a spark of humanity and genuine empathy, as well as a rare amount of agency. So often Custodes are ostensibly bound so strictly to their doctrine and regimented nature of lifestyle that they were built for, that as characters they're basically always flat. There's very little interesting going on with them. I mean, obviously there's characters like Valdor, but even Valdor, I'd argue, we don't know that much about him, and it is part of his character that he can't do a lot of free thinking and stuff like that. Like, we do get a lot of subtext, and he does sometimes mutter under his breath or whatever, like in some scenes, and we do understand he does have more going on with him. And especially in the last book of the Siege of Terra, we do see that he's kind of breaking at the seams and questioning things and stuff like that. But it took a lot for him to get there, and not every Custodes is Valdor, obviously. So, but like in the last book, he is faced with another mysterious eruption of cultist activity on Terra. Just as in the last novel, there is much more than meets the eye with this cult than merely violence and sedition against the throne, and they are seemingly too organized, too effective, and far too well equipped. So, mysteries inside of mysteries, and you get to see him kind of investigate more. Tying things off of our trio is Alea, who is very much herself with almost zero character development, which in her case is all well and good, because she's still one of my favorite characters. And one of my reasons was just because we don't get to see very much. I'm biased. I just love the Sisters of Silence. But she is from a pragmatic sense, she's the best thing a reader will get that will enable seeing the Imperium as it is without the interference of propaganda. She's specifically Alea, because there are others, even though their order has been pushed aside and neglected. There are others that have been crewing the black ships this entire time that are still loyal to the throne and absolutely are drinking the Kool-Aid. So Alea is still one of many. The majority of the sisterhood got kind of scattered and neglected by the Imperium, and it's just interesting that you see Alea's perspective. So she is given, in this book, she's given her chance that she's been kind of chomping at the bit for, to seek out answers to why the sisterhood was dismissed from Terra and allowed to fragment and become such an afterthought. It's a really good role for her character that allows the reader a much more thorough look into the lives of the Sisters of Silence and their complex relationship with the Adeptus Terra. So just like in the last book, each character is separate, doing their own thing throughout the entire book until events happen, and then they end up converging, and then it kind of carries on from there. And usually once that happens, that that you're in the third act, or the part where you get the most action. So the summary, without spoiling the entire thing, the summary can only cover how the book gets going. making it more of a tease than actually like a real summary. So Jek is new to her role in the time of great change and must find her footing as well as acclimate to the rapidly changing times the Imperium finds itself in, with the return of Primarch Rabute Gilliman. The opening of the Great Rift, splitting the galaxy in two, and the launching of the Indominus Crusade, Valerian is officially recognized as the hero of Vorley's Gate, with a growing sense of internal struggle between custodian passivity and active involvement in matters of the Imperium. He must navigate the strict life of a Custodes amid a violent investigation of a chaos cult known as the Splintered. And Alea, who is now given her chance to seek out answers to why the Sisterhood as an organization was dismissed from Terra and allowed to fragment and wither, and also just become such an afterthought and relegated only to crewing the black ships and performing limited duties on a few inquisitorial retinues. So that's the book. That's like how it starts getting rolling. So each chapter is kind of from a certain POV. So there's almost like 3 separate chapter 1s, and they kind of build on each other, sort of. So, like, not really, there isn't 3 chapter 1s, but each one kind of feels like a chapter 1. And the summary kind of starts the ball rolling for each of their chapters. And I just thought it would be helpful because of how many moving parts this book will have, just to kind of give you guys an idea of like where the story is headed. But so who is this book for? This book is still like super dialogue heavy, and it pays way more attention to like political intrigue or the complex ideas surrounding power, authority, law, and time. So among other things that I'll get into in the expanded thoughts section. However, there is much more action throughout this story than the last one, which shouldn't be confused with more action overall. I would say that if you are a fan of the setting, this is a read or a listen that would be satisfying, and not at all, like, actually just, like, a waste of time. So, yeah. If you like mysteries, I would say if you like a lot of action, this kind of isn't the one for you. There are intense action sequences that do take up a solid portion, but not really. This book is a lot more, just like the last one, dialogue than anything else, which isn't a bad thing. It's just if you're looking for that then this book ain't it. So how much lore does this book offer? It's strange. This book does offer a lot, and none of it's introductory lore, so it's nothing that you'd want to hear if you're like brand new to the setting. It's not like super explanatory useful. It's more like if you already know a lot of information about Warhammer, then it's super useful because it just adds a lot more of like context, and it demystifies some stuff, and it just kind of like gives you some more nuggets about like Astartes chapters that you don't get to hear about very much, because to be honest, there's a lot of Astartes chapters, and most of them don't have that much lore on them. So when we do get to hear more lore, it's pretty great. But there's also not like a one place to find all of this lore, because it's usually spread out in like a bunch of different codexes, and then those get supplements, and then you get like campaign books, but then you have the novels. So like finding these lore nuggets is actually kind of hard. And this is one of those books that actually gives you a little bit more detail on some Astartes chapters that you don't really see very often, so it's pretty nice. So there's also expanding ideas and kind of introducing you to more of the factionalism and beliefs within certain institutions, like the High Lords, the Ecclesiarchy, and the Custodes. So it offers a lot for those versed enough in 40k to pick up on all this stuff, but not in a lot. But the lore that is offered is mostly like party trick or like fluff lore. It's not galaxy shaping lore. I mean, there is a scene where you get to see Gilliman announcing the Indominus Crusade, and as far as I know, this is the first book you get to see Primaris Marines, which is huge. And I mean that in a chronological way. Not in like a this is the first book published that you actually will see them in, because that's just not how the setting works. There will be books that are new that come out like, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years from now, but like in the setting they'll be like prior to the M41 or M42. They'll be in like M39, you know. So chronologically, in the lore, this is the first time that the Imperium like sees the Primarchs, because a lot of people think that the first time you see them is Devastation of Baal, or in the first Dark Imperium book, because that's kind of also, you go to Mars and Belisarius Cawl does the speech, and then blah blah blah. So yeah. Anyways, moving on. Is this a standalone book? This time, no, it's not a standalone book. The other one did a super good job of kind of being one. And then this book isn't, because it relies a lot on the introductions you got from the characters, and knowing who the High Lords are, and the aftermath of the last book. I wouldn't say the last book purposefully like left all of these loose ends, because they aren't really. It's just like so much happened that this book uses a lot of what happened as a framework for what happens next. So yeah, this isn't like a next time on Saturday morning in the Powerpuff Girl. Like, it's not that. It's just a continuation of. So the homework, at the very least, is the previous book in the series, but as a supplement, I would also read the Vaults of Terra series, although unlike that series, you really don't need to read that to understand what's happening in this. This is a much more self-contained. In the other cases, in the other series' case, it helps to actually know what's going on here, because then you understand why Crowell's retinue like is running into so much trouble around Terra, and like why things are happening in certain locations, and why there's so much like military activity, even though they're, you know, like things are supposed to be kind of chill. So yeah, the more knowledge about the setting you go into this book with, the more you'll get out of it. That being said, it does wrap up super nicely, and it only leaves one really plain loose end, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, because Valerian, if they ever make another book about this series, the character that's gonna get another book is gonna be Valerian, because it's just such an obvious thing. Like, that's just how the book ended. Like, Valerian was going on a side quest. So yeah, it's a satisfying sequel overall. It doesn't ask for too much of an investment in the homework realm, because I don't know anybody who picks up a book 2 and then gets mad that they like have to read a book 1. But yeah, so honestly, it's an overall recommend. I think it's super good, well-rounded, well-written. Yeah. And if you want to hop off here, because I'm about to ramble into the void, because we're about to get into the expanded thoughts section, then go for it. I appreciate you watching and getting this far. Yeah, see you next week. But for those that are sticking around, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 sections to get through, and the first one, I'm gonna kind of talk more about the "is one enough" like theme that this book really kind of put forward. So, should the Imperium again put its faith in the few superhuman among themselves to make the great changes that need to be made and defended? Is there much choice then to let the Emperor and the Primarchs wield so much power and influence? And throughout the book, and even like literally how not how the book, it's the chapter before. I'm counting the epilogue as like an actual chapter, even though you probably shouldn't. But yeah, it's one of the last chapters. You get Jek's chapter. It ends with a foreboding statement of the Imperium making the same mistake as it had in the past by placing faith in the powers of a few, let alone a Primarch. Because the Imperium and Primarchs do not always have a great history. In fact, probably the majority of the Imperium's history has been spent not liking them versus liking them. Unless you ask certain Ministorum officials, then not so much. But most people don't know that there's 18 Primarchs. The High Lords are very versed in the heresy, and most Imperial citizens are not. So, yeah. So they are, after all, still human. The Imperium is built off the backs of untold trillions of humans spread out throughout the galaxy. And the Primarchs kind of, and those in power, the oligarchy, like the oligarchical nature that is the Imperium, is very classist. But the point is, those few people are not the reason the Imperium is the way it is. Like, the reason the Imperium has held on for so long is actually because of the actual trillions of people that have like fought, still fighting, and die to keep this thing, like this train rolling. It's not because Gilliman was just that cool. But yeah, so the many beliefs in the raw spirit of humanity is very much still present, and has shown numerous times that its destiny, at best, can only be guided by those with the raw power to do so. Even so, for a short time, before humanity eventually kind of does what humanity always does, and, you know, does the thing. The monologue by the Grand Master of the Inquisition at the end of the book is foreboding, but reflective of the history till now. Yeah. So I'm about to read an excerpt. So if you don't want to hear my beautiful, sweet reading voice, I suggest skipping ahead and or plugging your ears, because it's about to happen. But yeah, anyway, listen to me, Chancellor. Right now, shaken by all that has taken place, we speak of the Primarch as if he were some new emperor come to sweep all our history away and replace it with his bright new species of enlightenment. We think of him as a great redeemer, the restorer of lost greatness, and so the conflict begins, the weary fights between those that think of that matters. But Gilliman, let me assure you, is unimportant. He can make as many speeches as he likes. He can make as many reforms as he wishes to. It will all be absorbed. It will all be smothered. He has stamina, more than most, but even he will tire. The Imperium is the only enemy he can never hope to best, for it is older and vaster than any of us. I give him 10 years before he forgets that he was ever part of another world and chain his future to this one. When he next comes to Terra, if he ever does again, you will see the change. You will hear no more about what he believed during his lifetime, and plenty of what he has learned in this one. If he lives, if he dies, it makes no difference. Stasis will be the case, whether it ought to be or not. The Imperium will endure. That is the only truth and the only outcome. Imperium Eterna. So that whole speech wasn't necessarily a speech. It was actually a one-on-one meeting between the Grand Master of the Assassins, Phaedix, and Jek, the Chancellarius. So the two kind of factions that make up the High Lord, or the political culture, I guess the political climate on Terra in this book is called Stasis and Reform. So it kind of, I mean, it's in the title. If you're a fond of Stasis, you're trying to maintain the status quo, and the reason they believe that is because the Imperium is perfect, and it's similar to the Amalathians. Everything that happens is because of the Emperor's will, so changing it means that you're going up against the Emperor's will, and it's the exact same thing with Stasis. They think that the status quo is just the Emperor's will. We wouldn't have gotten this far if we had been wrong this whole time. So maintain all of the institutions as they have been working and change nothing, etc., etc. Whereas reform is like, hey guys, we can probably do some things better. That doesn't mean like insult the Emperor's name, but like I think we can do like the trivials, like some trivial things differently, and we can also make other changes because time means we have to change. But yeah, so it's a constant fight between these two like generational beliefs. And what's interesting, I think, about this setting is the longevity of the serving officials. So you'll have people living for like hundreds of years. And in the case of like Udi Araskian, who's the Mechanicus fabricator general, but he also is Adeptus status, So he sits like he's hundreds of years old. I don't know his exact age, but I know that like he's easily over 500 years old. So the it's really fascinating to see how longevity affects basically stagnancy, because you'll have somebody who's just like made up their mind 400 years ago and just hasn't changed it and doesn't even intend to. So whenever like somebody dies on the council, it's a big deal, because that just opens so many doors politically for stuff to change. And also just the fact that each of these High Lords represent a significant portion of the imperial like power dynamic. But yeah, so yeah, I would love to know your guys' thoughts though on whether the Imperium is needs like the reason it's even together is because of one person. I mean, yes, because of the Emperor, but like in Gilliman's case, like should we actually have one person calling the shots unilaterally, or is it better to have like the high 12 doing the whole thing, or even better, should each sector kind of govern itself, and let humanity kind of like loosen the leash a little bit, let it out more. But yeah, okay. So the next one is the Mechanicus's view on, or the Custodes, sorry, the Custodes' view on Mechanicus. So they straight up view the Mechanicus as charlatans. Like they don't take them seriously at all. I mean, they let them into the throne room to like work and do maintenance and stuff like that, just because of like the pure industrial like levels that the Mechanicus like works at, and so they're the only ones that kind of can work on the throne. But I have a feeling that if they could let anybody else do it, they would. Like if the leagues of Votan ever get to the point where they actually like get enough respect, I feel like the Custodes would just be like, hey, do you guys want to take over? Because these guys, they suck. But yeah, so it makes sense that they would think this too, because they see firsthand that the Mechanicus doesn't actually know what they're doing, and with the Golden Throne or the Astronomicon, it is even more glaring to them, the fact that they don't know as much as they would like the Imperium to believe, seeing as the Custodes have access to such a breadth of knowledge and are arguably just as versed in the techno-arcane as the Mechanicus. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. To expand on those two points, the Custodes live for a really long time, right? So there's probably there's none of them have been around for the whole 10,000 years. I'm positive, because they've left the palace. I mean, contrary to popular belief, the Custodes do leave the palace even when they are in their like era of exile, where they just like their self-imposed closeted nature. But they did absolutely leave the palace. They just didn't do it in droves like they do now in the era Indomitus. So there is that. They also but to the point, there are probably some that are like 4,000 or 5,000 years old. It's just like I don't think any of them are 10,000 years old. The reason I bring it up is just because with that long of a lifespan, they've absolutely seen the Mechanicus deteriorate even further, and lose that important knowledge and lose their edge and become more dogmatic. And the Custodes definitely don't respect that about the Mechanicus. So the other point that I would probably touch on is just because they have so much information and they strive for so much perfection that I refuse to believe that the Custodes haven't like read up on like what a circuit board is and like other, I don't know, like techno arcane mysteries like into the Mechanicus. I feel like they have, and they totally just watch the Mechanicus bumble around and they're just like, man, they're dumb. But yeah, so there's not a whole lot to expand out on, like particularly with the view, but it's an interesting point of view to get into the Mechanicus. So the regular Imperial citizen or even the Guardsman is actually going to think that the Mechanicus is like are all like all the adepts and engineers and even probably the tech thralls are geniuses. compared to them. I mean, probably not the tech thralls, because they're straight up thralls. Like, they're serfs. They don't know anything. They're like on the level of imperial serfs. But the adepts, the ancient seers, the magoses, like, they're going to be looked on like, oh my god, this guy knows everything. But yeah, so there's a really good quote actually from one of the Warhammer crime novels that goes something along the lines of, the Mechanicus will decry someone as a mutant while having an actively burning stove for a head. It's hilarious. Warhammer crime series novels, it's great. You get a lot more boots on the ground look at like what the Mechanicus are about, and also how the basic imperial citizen actually rubs elbows with the Mechanicus. It is pretty great. And the other thing that I probably want to tack onto this is the body horror element. I think it's undersold, particularly nowadays. I don't want to be a boomer and be all like, the Warhammer I grew up with was It's like, no, but I do think it got watered down a little bit as far as the Mechanicus is concerned, because they're either under described, or they are super clean looking, and they're like all chrome, or they're like shiny brass or something like that, and maybe they'll have like puffy steam engine or something like that, or they'll be like a weird Rubik's cube with some tentacles. But like, I don't know, man. I've read some stuff where like the mechanics were like hard to look at because they had like their stomach opened up and it was just like a bunch of random bits and bobs sticking out of random bits and bobs. Like that was kind of there's a reason that people are kind of unnerved by the Mechanicus, and I just don't think that the modern Mechanicus books are just, they don't hit for me the same. They're still good, but it's just watered down, and I'm not entirely sure why. But yeah, anyways, so as smart as Mechanicus is, it's actually due more to their like actual accrual of knowledge, while simultaneously denying anyone else the ability to learn anything about the stuff, like how stuff operates, than going the extra steps and being the only ones legally able to build and provide the tech to the Imperium. So what officially happened, basically, and I know this section is kind of, there's a lot, but what officially happened with the Mechanicus is like way back when the Imperium was like first founding, the Emperor made a pilgrimage to Mars, and then he kind of impressed them. The story is longer than this. I'm being super reductionist, but he impressed the Mechanicus in such a way that they kind of believed that he was the Omnissiah, which the Omnissiah is the like the physical manifestation of the machine god, or the avatar of the machine god. It's not the actual machine god. That, like, don't get that twisted. The Mechanicus doesn't think that the Emperor is the actual machine god. They just think that he is the Omnissiah, which is different from the actual machine god. So yeah, like, that's something that I do see kind of confused a couple of times, but that's not the same thing. Also, if you want to get a really interesting conversation going, just ask like 4 different people at the same time who the Mechanicus, like, who's the machine god, or what is the machine god, and you'll probably get like 4 different answers, because there's a lot of fan fiction and like fan theories on, like, there's people that definitely think that it's been confirmed and it absolutely is this one thing, but I don't know, it's not 100%. So if you meet somebody and they're like, it's 100% this, bro, like, it hasn't been confirmed. We don't know. We have a good guess. We have a really good guess, but it's not 100%. The GW could absolutely just pull the rug out from under us and be like, it's something else. Ha, got him, April Fools. So yeah, I don't know. Point is, the Custodes, not being part of the Imperium and having a comprehensive grasp on Imperial history, understand just how far the Mechanicus have fallen since then. But yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, okay, well, that's how the section was supposed to end, but I guess I should actually finish it. So the the Emperor makes it to Mars, right? He impresses them. They kind of think he's the Messiah, and then the Treaty of Olympus gets signed. And the Treaty of Olympus they're basically, the Emperor is like, hey, so I won't order a compliance on you. You guys seem like you know what's up, and you've got your stuff together. So like, help me conquer the galaxy. And like the Martians, the cult of the machine, are like, hey, so we'll help you, but we want every STC that we find. We want like patents, basically. We want to be the only ones that can study this knowledge, and we also want to be the only provider to the Imperium of this technology. So it's like a triple threat. It's like if they basically monopolized knowledge, if I guess to put it super plainly, and that's why the Mechanicus is such a big deal, and also why all the Imperium kind of thinks that they're like super geniuses, because they're kind of the only ones that are allowed to study technology and like theory and like electricity and like physics. The rest of the Imperium, like the most they get to do is like basic study. So like the guardsman is able to do like incredibly minor maintenance, like change a tire basically, and even then the engine seer is going to be like, what are you doing? You didn't pray. But yeah, so that's kind of what makes the Mechanicus so special in this setting versus, you know, the rest of the Imperium. Also, lastly, to note, and I probably have already said this, and this is going to be a repeat, but the Mechanicus is not actually part of the Imperium. They can absolutely like declare the treaty as void. It's just they probably shouldn't, because they're practically right next door to Terra, and Mars would just get like completely nuked from orbit, and Exterminatus would be insane. But yeah, so anyways, next topic I wanted to talk about was the Primaris Space Marines, and I touched on this a little bit earlier. So the Primaris Space Marines show up for the first time, chronologically speaking, for those attempting to interpret some kind of linearity from, you know, the setting. Put simply, the Primaris are just a design update on the original model of Space Marines, which is a very reductionist way of like putting things, since whole new organs and a bunch of different adaptations are put in there. And also the original Primaris, so probably the ones that are created through Crossing the Rubicon and just training normally, are the real Primaris. Like those are the true upgrade, but the Primaris that are woken up by call after 10,000 years of like stasis, they're actually pretty robotic. And if you read the Dawn of Fire series, you'll get a pretty good look at how that kind of is a flaw, because they just don't fight very well compared to the threats they're like if they're fighting other like base humans, then they're fine. But if they're fighting like traitor legions, the traitors are like, bro, what is up with these guys? Why they're so robotic? It's just because they were basically like taught through hypnotherapy, because they were in stasis the whole time. So they just basically had like movies, like interactive movies played for them for like 10,000 years on like how to fight and all that jazz. So in their brain, they know how to fight, but they know how to fight by doctrine, not by actually having learned it. So yeah, they're these guys in the initial phases of the Indomitus Crusade, and until they kind of break through that conditioning, they fight pretty robotically. But yeah, anyways, so the old ones are called renames, basically Firstborn. I don't want to get too deep on it, but I'll touch on it a little bit, just because like there's probably dozens of other YouTubers that have already talked about like why Primarises are different from the old ones, but I'll touch on it a little bit. And if you want to know more, there's, like I said, there's a lot of other lore tubers out there that'll get you there. But yeah, okay. So Belisarius Call was tasked by Gilliman to make improvement basically on the Space Marine model. So he made essentially 100,000 Space Marines for each chapter. And I mean every single first founding legion. Like, so you've got all 18. And to be honest, he probably made all 20, but like, it doesn't say that specifically. All I know is that there are definitely 18. Gilliman has expressly told Belisarius to not touch or awaken the they are loyal because they're in stasis, and they weren't exposed to the salt that is the horny boys, the spiky boys. So 9 times, like, probably if they got woken up, they would actually be loyal and stay loyal, but Gilliman has forbidden it. So there's just 900,000 Space Marines just sitting in Mars still, ready to be woken up. But Gilliman is like, nah, nope. But yeah, so Gilliman wakes up 9, and he starts his Indomitus Crusade with basically a bunch of fresh Primaris Space Marines and a lot of other Firstborn that he accumulated on his trip over to Earth. But he calls all of these guys the Grey Shields. So the specific interesting thing about the Grey Shields is that he doesn't have them serve separately. So even in the Great Crusade, you might have emissaries sent to each legion, which would just be like one Space Marine that would come over and be like, well, this is how we do it in the World Eaters. And this is how we do it in the White Scars. But they don't even... He is just like, hey, so we're going to have one person in each squad represent for... So you'll have like one Raven Guard and like one Dark Angel and one Space Wolf and one... And it's just really interesting to see that dynamic play out, because it looks a lot more like the Death Watch, but on a grander scale, and also way less better equipped because the Death Watch is just like insane. But yeah, Gilliman at the time ensures that as many Space Marine chapters as he can are also given the technology, information, and supplies to get back to full strength and make Primaris Marines themselves via like torchbearer fleets. It's a huge step and arguably has bigger implications going forwards than the returning of him as like a Primarch. Because honestly, if Gilliman had never come back, but Call was just like, hey guys, here's because like Gilliman wasn't there to tell him to not wake up all of them. So if Gilliman wasn't there and then Call was just like, okay, he's not coming back, he's just gonna stay in stasis at the Temple of Hera, I think it's time to just wake these guys up. Then there would just be what, like 880,000? No, my math is not mathing. Hang on, I refuse. 1,800,000, because that's 900,000 times 2. I can't believe I couldn't do that math in my head. Oh my god. And I tried to say 180,000. Okay. Anyways, let's keep going. Yeah, so he would have woken up like everybody, because Gilliman wouldn't have been there to be like, nah, you can't wake up the Iron Warriors or the like all the spiky boys. Anyways, that's pretty much all I wanted to really talk about there. Kind of the introductory to like why Primaris is even a thing. I'm sure a lot of people that are already know, and I'm being super redundant, but you know, it's something to bring up, especially if you're new to the setting. You have to understand that like the Primaris and the Firstborn do have kind of a bone to pick. Yeah. So the next section I'm calling the animosity between the High Lords and the Space Marines. This is an excerpt. It starts with one. It's not the whole thing, but it's from Violetta Rescaveler, and she says that there are those on the high table itself who would rather see Terra burn to ashes than let a Primarch govern. They know their history. So this isn't just a reference to the Horus Heresy. As rare as it seems to those not privy to the information, reports on Astartes turning from the throne and joining the side of the traitors occur often enough. The High Lords understand that the Astartes are not wholly reliable. Although more importantly, here the Astartes are often just too stubborn to get them to actually do anything they don't want to do, especially with politics as the leverage. The fact that Astartes don't respond well to being dictated to by those they deem as unworthy of their respect, it is in their fundamental differences between being transhuman and being mortal that doesn't help with allowing an easy working relationship between these two groups. So yeah, like everyone knows about the heresy, but there's been other things like the Nova Terra incident, the Bad App War, the false Primarch issue, where, and also just really milder, more benign things, you know, like the Sons of Malice that just kind of turn from the Emperor. There's chapters that just go dark, and the High Lords are the ones that do get those reports, you know, unless the Inquisition can hide it from them. But generally, the High Lords are more informed than most, so they do understand that, like, it might take a little bit more, but the Astartes absolutely can fail. So unless you're a Grey Knight or a Custodian, you can probably fall to chaos. But yeah, so the next one is factionalism within the Imperium, as well as the sharing of ultimate power. So there are many factions within the Imperium that can speak with what is essentially ultimate power. The Primarchs are the sons of the Emperor and speak with the authority and weight that comes with that. Then there's the Adeptus Custodes, which are not officially part of the Imperium, coupled with the fact that they strictly follow the orders, or what they interpret to be what would be in the best interest of the Emperor himself. They can do much more of what those operating within the strictures of the imperial law cannot. And then there are the Inquisitors, whose entire purpose is built like into the DNA of their organization. It's to circumvent the normal bureaucracy in order to act or react to situations appropriately, and most importantly, in my opinion, unilaterally. The obvious name to throw in here as an example is Cryptman and his Scorch and Burn experience / solution with slowing down the Tyranids. Rogue traders are another group that often act with far more power and agency than what can usually be seen. It's great to see that in this book, the ideas of power and authority are explored. So Guilliman is the Imperial Regent being given that title by the Emperor, but how would anyone else but Guilliman know that, seeing as the conversation was psychic? It's a psychic one, and nobody else was in the room, not even other Custodes, between him and his dad. So sure, he was given the sword as a kind of badge of office, but we are talking about an institution, and by institution, I mean the High Lords, because once he got declared as Imperial Regent, Guilliman literally superseded the High Lords. Like, the High Lords report to him, which is a huge deal to basically telling somebody, like a body of people, that, hey, after 10,000 years, you guys are second now. You got to ask permission. It's big. That's a big deal, especially on top of all that. I've mentioned this several times, but the Imperium is very classist. Okay, so going from top of the mountain to like just below the top of the mountain is again, it's just a big deal. It kind of hits their pride bone. But yeah, so the factionalism on Terra between Stasis and Reform is reflective of the Inquisition's big split between Puritan and Radical. In the Ecclesiarchy, is the Emperor truly dead on the throne, or can he be reborn? And the Ordo Xenos, there's how much technology should be used from the aliens and how much should we not use in the aliens. And then inside of the Mechanicus, there is the argument of, is the Emperor the Omnissiah, or did he lie? So there's really big divisions and splits within the majority of the imperial like arms of government, if that makes a whole lot of sense. But yeah, so the Imperium is absolutely ancient, and it's great to see that reflected in these massive institutions having ingrained and multi-generational beliefs that run up against each other and really cause a bunch of friction. For number 6, I have mortals fighting Space Marines and the power levels from book to book. Okay, so this one gets me. Because I I'm at like almost 300 books, right? And the gulf in how Space Marines are depicted in each novel, especially like if you want whiplash, read a book that was like early 2000s, right? And then read a book now of a Space Marine, and you're going to be like, wait, what? Because that, like, basically, are they superhuman or are they just very enhanced humans? Do readers expect too much to have a set kind of consistency for Space Marines from book to book? Take the Grey Knights, for example. They are able to subdue the likes of Angron and Mortarion in some of their novels, and specifically, I think it's Sword of the Emperor, where a Grey Knight takes on Mortarion, and you know the Grey Knight I'm talking about. I know the Grey Knight I'm talking about. But anyways, and then in the Emperor's Gift, you have Angron being taken down. And then in another novel, you have them getting, thrashed by Typhus, who is not a demon Primarch at all. Not even sort of. So it's like, hey guys, if you can't, and also literally in the same book, I don't know, this is touchy, but like in the same book, they go up against the Space Wolves and get thrashed. So it's like, bro, what? Like, if you can fight a demon Primarch, I think you can fight other Space Wolves. Okay, you guys are psychically powerful. 1 in a billion, like, makes, because it's like, no, I think it's 1 in a million. It's something absurd that takes like a Grey Knight. It's 10 times harder to become a Grey Knight than it is to become a Space Marine, okay? And they are trained more, they have more specialization, they fight better, like everything's better about a Grey Knight. And then in the same novel, they fight the Space Wolves, and like the justification is like, because they're space. I'm like, shut up, okay? I don't hate the Space Wolves, but I just hate the justification there of just like, oh yeah, we'll tear apart Grey Knights, but it's just because we're Space Wolves, because we grew up on Fent. I'm like, come up with a different justification, okay? I know you guys had to fight, but like, that really irked me. Anyways, and you'll see stuff like that. It's later, so if they can take on like a demon Primarch, then they should be nothing for Space Marines to fight a human, basically. But you'd be wrong to assume that, because like Sisters of Silence, into the Gaunt's Ghost novels, shout out to our boy McCall, he kills 3 of them in like a training exercise. He doesn't like literally kill them, but like if it hadn't been a training exercise, he would have. And then Inquisitors and their retinues, rogue traders, and even like nameless Astra Militarum regiments can like absolutely shred Space Marines sometimes, which like, yes, in some circumstances absolutely makes sense when they like call down, a heaven's worth of artillery. Yes, they're gonna die, but there's in other scenes where like there's a squad that like just aims for the eye holes, and then they're just dropping them, like just stacking bodies. And it's just like, listen, I thought the Astartes were like so fast that you like couldn't see them when they chose to move super like, I don't understand, like, are they superhuman or not? But yeah, and then if you really 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 want to see some nonsense, there's a scene in the Dawn of Fire series where the custodian, like, a custodian guard just gets like shot through the chest by a digital weapon. And then also the fights between the Space Marines and the Tau are just like, bro, what is even happening? Because the Tau are just mowing them down, and it's like, all right, that's great. I understand that like it's because you kind of have to, like, each novel is from like a certain POV, so you have to kind of like, you can't just drop a Space Marine and then have them be like, for the Imperium, and then just wipe out the planet. But like, even in the lore, it's like one Space Marine can take a town, and then like a chapter can take an entire system. And it's like, okay, cool, then why is it in some books they're getting like just pulverized upon touching the ground? Like it feels like in some authors, like there's a book the newest, The Perfect Son, there was a scene where the guy, like the Space Marine, almost drowned, and I was like, you can't drown. That's not even possible for you. You have like a special lung that can breathe underwater and sort out toxins. Like I don't understand what's happening. And I don't even know if it was like a continuity error or if the author like really believed. I don't know. I mean, I think it tried to pass itself off as like the certain Emperor's Children Marine like wasn't necessarily drowning, but he was panicking because he like had that human reflex to panic while he was underwater because he just like still had a little bit of humanity left in him, and he just remembered when he was a kid and also like almost drowned. But I was just like, dude, no way. Like you're conditioned out of that. Like you're so far above like that human instinct. You are conditioned way more, and especially a Emperor's Children. They're supposed to be like the finest. They made it such a big deal about it in the heresy books. But yeah, anyways, that's pretty much gonna wrap it up for me. If you guys want to comment, I will probably respond. Most likely, definitely respond. I don't know, pick a section that you find most interesting, or all of them. I would love to hear your thoughts. But yeah, until I guess, yeah, until next week, I'll see you around.